From Black Wall Street to the Harlem of the South, Richmond's Jackson Ward has had many nicknames throughout the years. This Black History Month, VCU InSight reporter Phoenix Keil sat down with a man familiar with this historic district.
Thank you, Madison. I'm here with Gary Flowers, who runs a business called Walking the Ward with Gary Flowers that gives tours of some of the historic and educational sites in Jackson Ward. Gary, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to InSight.
Thank you for the invitation.
So can you start by telling us a little bit more about what Walking the Ward with Gary Flowers is?
Absolutely. Founded in 2016, Walking the Ward with Gary Flowers presents to the world the hidden history of Jackson Ward, which is now referred to as historic Jackson Ward. I, through the walking tour or bus tour, traversed the institutions that made Jackson Ward not only known across the country as Black Wall Street, the birthplace of Black capitalism, but also as the Harlem of the South in a social sense.
So can you tell us a little bit about some of the notable people and places that are in historic Jackson Ward?
Yes, absolutely. The churches, most notably historic Ebenezer Baptist Church and historic Six Mountain Zion Baptist Church, are two of the preeminent religious institutions. The historic Armstrong High School, along with the Vanderbiver Catholic Parochial School, the first Black Catholic church in Virginia and the first Black Catholic public school in Virginia. And then the banks. Virginia led the nation in Black-owned banks between 1888 and 1910. At our height, we had 5 Black-owned banks. And so we passed by what was the Second Street Savings Bank, the True Reformers Bank, which was the first Black bank chartered in America.
So you talked a little bit about the banks being part of why we call Jackson Ward Black Wall Street. How about the Harlem of the South? Where did that come from?
The social epicenter of historic Jackson Ward was 2nd Street, known as the Deuce. And that is what I refer to as the corridor of culture and commerce. The 800 Black businesses of Jackson Ward, the 7 Black insurance companies, and the 5 Black banks all rotated around and fed off of what was on 2nd Street. These were hotels like the Slaughters Hotel, the Eggleston Hotel, the Hippodrome Theater, the Coliseum, were all social venues for people not only in Richmond, but people who were traveling through Richmond by way of the Green Book.
So next, can you tell me a little bit about how Jackson Ward was key to the civil rights movement in Richmond?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, Jackson Ward was named after Confederate General Stonewall Jackson. And as such, it was arguably one of the first places of voter suppression and vote gerrymandering for Black men after they received the privilege to vote in 1870 by way of the 15th Amendment. And so there became a civil rights movement in the 1870s. In 1904, 51 years before Mrs. Rosa Parks and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, Mrs. Walker and Mr. Mitchell used their newspapers, the St. Luke Herald, Mrs. Walker, and the Richmond Planet, Mr. Mitchell. They boycotted the segregated trolley car system in Richmond, shutting the business down and putting Richmond on the map. And so many of us in grade school should have learned about the boycott in Richmond in 1904 before we learned about the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. The values that were birthed in Jackson Ward after the American Civil War are relevant today. Mutual aid societies, self-determination, women's suffrage, the idea of entrepreneurship, and a sense of racial pride and dignity all have relevance in 2025, but they were found in Jackson Ward over 150 years ago.
What are your feelings about the recent trend of discontinuing DEI programs?
I want to quote Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, who I think very brilliantly made the point, to which I agree, that diversity, equity, and inclusion are American values. Diversity found in what is written in Latin on our currency here in the United States, e pluribus unum, out of many we are one, is diversity. Equity can be found in the 1868 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment holds, among other tenets, equal protection under the law for all citizens. Equity. And then lastly, but surely not least, would be inclusion. Many of us as young children were made to say the Pledge of Allegiance in public school. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible. That's inclusion. And so I agree that DEI, as we know it, is American values.
Thank you so much for joining us. For more information on how to book a tour of Jackson Ward, you can visit the website walkingtheward.com. Madison, back to you.